What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com, and today we are looking ahead to the top 5 fights in the month of October in the world of mixed martial arts. Now, I say in the world of mixed martial arts, for the first time ever, I put in a different sport, but there is a connection to mixed martial arts. You can probably guess what it is, but we'll talk about that at the very end of the show. I wanted somewhere. Look, we know what fight it is. I wanted somewhere to talk about it, and I was like, look, this is a good place to talk about it, so let's do that. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the other fights. It's not a great month, I'm not going to lie to you. I went through a lot of these events. Look, there's one big UFC event, obviously, at UFC 294. There is a big One Championship event, there's a big Bellator event, and obviously there's the big boxing event too. But I suppose the undercards of those events are not amazing, especially the UFC. I think like the UFC Fight Night cards are not amazing. Actually, as I record here, I'm recording this a little bit early because at the end of September I will obviously be covering the Bellator Dublin card. So there's a Cage Warriors Dublin card coming up in October, and a lot of the fights haven't been actually announced for that yet. So maybe there'll be a couple of big fights on that as well. And, you know, that's another card to throw in there. There's a lot of good up-and-comers on that card so far, but, you know, not a standout main event yet. But, you know, there's, you know, if we get this Paul Hughes versus George Hardwick fight, that will definitely be one to throw into here. It might even be number 2 even behind one of the big fights, but and these are my top fights as well. So, you know, maybe might necessarily agree, but I'm going to give you my reasons why I like them and why I'm looking forward to them in the month of October. But again, as I say, it's not the most packed month. We're after coming from a really interesting month. We had the madness, I suppose, of the middleweight title fight, one that we got on short enough notice. And like, as I talked about with Cage Warriors there, and even other stuff as well, sometimes when we're not prepared for them, when they come up on short notice and we get shocked by them, they're maybe a little bit better. But you know what I love as well? I love looking at a fight. Like the first fight here, and we'll get into it. Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira. It's a fight we've seen before, but it's a fight we've known about now that's going to happen for a good while. We can get ready for it. We can talk about it. And we're still obviously a few weeks out from it here. Nearly a month out from it. So a good bit out from him. And we can set the stall out and talk about the reasons why we're looking forward to it. Because I feel like, and it's a reason why I like doing this show every month. Sometimes it's like week to week to week, event to event to event. And that's very tough. You know, it's very tough to like set out the stall for what's coming up and, you know, look forward to it. Like let's say if you're a fan of, you know, I don't know, soccer, and the World Cup is coming, like, the World Cup, it's in 3 weeks away, I can't wait for this team to play that team, and you know, the Rugby World Cup is on at the moment, I'm sure, you know, the NFL playoffs when they're coming up or something. But you know, we're spoiled in MMA. We always have something to look forward to, you know. But it's like Christmas every week, which is great, right? But also we can't build up the anticipation for it when it happens every week. So that's what I'm trying to bring in this show. And first of all, Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira. Look, it's again going to be a fascinating fight, and I am doing this as my first fight. I'm not going chronologically, you could call it here, by date, because I wanted to talk about this one first. And the reason I wanted to talk about this one first is something we all are probably guilty of, and we kind of decide what's going to happen in a fight or any different sporting endeavor, and we're like, that's what's going to happen. Look, we saw it before, we're going to see the same thing again, forget about it, right? I don't want to do that for this fight. So I'm almost talking myself into this one now, but I think I can talk you into it as well. It's been a whirlwind career for Charles Oliveira, obviously. 34-9. I remember I did a stat about him before, and he's fought, what was it, the first 8 fights of his career, he was like, no, more even than that. Like the first 12 fights of his career, he was like 12-0, and then the next 16, he was like 8-8, and then he was like 12-0 again, or something like that. Just, he's had an absolutely mad career, but he's in the midst of that second brilliant patch now. Okay, he lost to Makhachev back in 2022, but he came in and he beat Beneil Dariush pretty comprehensively. It was one of those fights, I remember I gave it as one of my flyers, I think, for the first round knockout, or for the knockout anyway, and it just showed that he's still there, right? It showed what he has become over the last few years and that he still has that. And what has he become over the last few years? I hear you asking me out there. Well, what he's become is this unbelievably dangerous submission guy that he always was. Now he hasn't become that. But with this jam-packed, robust, insane, mad striking style behind it. That's what he's become. He's just become what I suppose a lot of the Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighters of ore became, but not as effective as him ever. Like, remember Verdum when he was throwing these big high kicks, or Jacare, and then they were kind of pulling guard, like Verdum, catching Fedor in triangles and stuff like that. He's become that, but a more, the 2023 version of that, basically, where he is bringing pressure, he's throwing big shots, his technique is better than most, or, certainly submission artists of old, should we say. And very few people are able to stick with him. At the very top of the division, Dariush wasn't, Gaethje wasn't, Poirier wasn't, Chandler wasn't, Ferguson, etc. None of them were. The only one who was Makhachev. And why was Makhachev able to stick with him? Well, Makhachev was able to stick with him because he is a better technical fighter and he can grapple just as well. And every fighter that's out there, well, most fighters that are out there is, I don't know if this is the correct phrase, but an anathema to them, right? There's their kryptonite. There is someone who, and we saw with Sean Strickland against Israel Adesanya, someone who just stands up to their ability with an opposite ability that nullifies it, right? And sometimes it's very hard for us to comprehend that when someone is so good, right? Like an Adesanya or whoever. But if you have a certain set of skills that render the other person's winning skill set neutral, you are onto an absolute winner. And that's seemingly what Makhachev has here. But since that fight, Makhachev has obviously also fought once against Alexander Volkanovski, UFC 284, and became, I don't know, was human the word on that night, but I think a lot of people looked at that and said, he still won, but he's beatable. He still won against the pound for pound best fighter in the world, but maybe he's a little bit more beatable. There was a few positions he was put in where he landed on the bottom and different things where he looked more beatable. Now, as I said, if you have listened to this show before, I'm not going to give you a technical breakdown of all of these fights, and maybe a couple of them I will a little bit, but for this one, I think it's all about belief for the Bronx. I truly believe that. Funnily enough, conceive, believe, achieve. If the Bronx goes out there and he throws his shots, he goes for his submissions, he tries to land that head kick, he tries to land that punch down the middle, he refuses to back down. If he is taken down, there's no giving up. There's no, oh no, I've been taken down. You go for your submissions, you try to get back up, you fight. If there is that belief in him, he has a chance. There's no doubt about that, because you saw in the Volkanovski fight, like Volkanovski is this high level fighter, but you saw him cause trouble in certain different ways. When he technically struck with him, he caused him trouble in different ways. Stopping the takedowns, getting on top himself. Maybe Oliviera looks at that and thinks, right, I don't have it's not that he's a similar skill set to Volkanovski, but can he put Makhachev in certain positions which Volkanovski put him in, right? And I'll say it again, to do all of that, you need your confidence. You need to be at your best. And it felt, after that Dariush fight, that he had it. He was still confident. He hadn't lost. And that's the most important thing, right? We saw it with Jose Aldo. When he lost to Conor McGregor, what happened? He came back against Frankie Edgar. He got knocked out in, 13 seconds. Came back against Frankie Edgar and decided not to get punched. If you remember that fight. Just so confident, defensively, elite, absolutely brilliant. Looked fantastic. Dariush, not necessarily a similar thing, but went out there and destroyed the number one contender in a round. Right? But now you're back facing Makhachev. Can you do it again? can you do it against the guy who did it to you? You know, this, and it's funny because we look at Makhachev and we think, right, you have to be confident, you have to do the right things over and over and over. But that's also the way you beat Oliviera. Makhachev beat him because he had the confidence and he did the right things over and over and over. And he's going to have to do that again. And I would say the one thing for Makhachev as well, it's 7 months between the Volkanovski fight and now. And I just wonder, so like sometimes a break like that, and it's not too much of a break, you know, it's, I suppose, on par for champions, but sometimes a break like that is, after a fight like that can help you an awful lot, right? But I wonder what adjustments he's going to make. And I wonder if the adjustments are warranted. And the reason I say that is like, and this is maybe going in defiance of the point I just made a minute ago, that like maybe the Bronx can look at the mistakes and prey on them. But like, if you try to change your game when your game is so good all the way along, and I'm not saying he's going to rip up the playbook or anything here, but if you make even slight adjustments, are they going to work? And you're fighting a completely different fighter, as I said again here. And are they going to work? Or do you just go in and kind of do what you did the first time against Oliveira? But fighters don't necessarily like doing that. They like to improve camp on camp, fight on fight, month on month type of thing. I think there's a lot to talk about when you get into this. And, you know, we have, I suppose, again, like, there's a massive Volkanovski fight coming here again, I think, for the winner, maybe. There could be a massive McGregor fight coming, which is life-changing. Like you have to think about that as well. Like if McGregor comes in there and beats Chandler, whether you know, think he will or think he won't, you know, he could very well get a title shot next. And you want to be the champion when he gets a title, don't you? Because you're going to get that pay-per-view and you're going to get the red panty night. We all know it. We all know. So this is a huge, massive, important fight for these, and that's just a part of it as well. All right, we'll move on, but we won't move too far because we're staying at the same event. And I want to talk next about Paulo Costa versus Khamzat Chimaev. It's been, I'm going to use the phrase whirlwind a lot here, but it's been a real whirlwind for Boris Chimaev. He hasn't fought since September 2022. And obviously this is your top 5 fights for October. Why has he been out for a year? Where has he been? What's he been doing? What's been going on? Why has he been out for a year? Like, have we ever had that question answered? You know, I'm sure there's injuries or timings or whatever, you know, visa issues and all that. But again, a guy who fought, it felt like every week at one stage, now hasn't fought in a year. First things first, like the last fight. How's that going to affect him? How's that going to harm him? What's that going to do to his game? How much has he improved? How much has he changed? Will ring rust be an issue? Who has he been training with? Who has he been sparring with? Has there been any injuries? There's a lot to say there, right? If Chimaev had fought a month ago and he was fighting again, right, maybe you could say, okay, short notice, whatever. But we know what he's been like. We know where he is. We know where his game's at. Okay, and I think that's a big point as well. Just a quick aside here, a slight tangent. People talking about Adesanya and saying, oh, he's finished. But like, Adesanya's been fighting regularly and we haven't really seen any of that. So is there any major signs that he is finished? Like, I don't think so. So why are you saying that type of thing, you know? Whereas we haven't had any major signs and we don't know about Chimaev. And he's coming in here against a guy who, look, again, he also hasn't fought since August last year, but we know the reasons why he hasn't fought. There was like contracts and madness and, you know, falling out fights and all of that sort of guff, right? But you have to say that this is a very favourable matchup for Chimaev. The one issue I would say for him, and the one big thing as well, is he's moving up to middleweight. And that might be the reason I'm most intrigued in this. I see how he will deal with a guy who is probably, you know, the siziest guy in that weight class, the biggest, strongest guy in that weight class. If he can pick him up and take him down, will he have issues? Like, I always thought back in the day that Colby Covington might be better off going to middleweight. And I remember, I think it was actually Artem Lava replied to me, goes, try picking something up and now try pick something else up with 10 extra pounds in it, see how easy it is, or 15 extra pounds as the case may be with that. And that is true, in fairness. That is true. Now, Chimaev obviously has fought at middleweight before, but not, at this level. He's really never fought, I suppose. Well, that's wrong. The Gilbert Burns fight was that. But other than that, some good wins against Kevin Holland's a good fighter on his day, not necessarily that day. And, Reese McKee's a good fighter. Gerald Marchard, Li Zhengyang is a good fight. Li Zhengyang. But it is only really the Gilbert Burns fight. And that was at welterweight. So let's see how it looks at middleweight. But my reason I put this in here is I can't wait for it. I cannot wait for it. I cannot wait to see how Chimaev looks. I cannot wait to see if he gets an absolutely destructive win again and he'll be fighting next for the title. Dana White obviously was kind of saying, oh yeah, we're going to make the rematch for Adesanya. And he was like, whoa, what? I never said that. And completely backtracked the next Tuesday afterwards. So, he'd probably call me some weirdo journalist now as well. Grand, feel free. But I wonder, did he think, well, Chimaev's going to be fighting here in a couple of weeks. Let's see what happens. There are other people obviously in there as well, but I think Chimaev, if you put Burns, first of all, Li Jingliang, Burns, Holland, and Bohachina all together, 4 wins in a row, geez, that's a very good case, I think, for a title shot. A very, very good case for a title shot. And I know, okay, a couple of them are down the weights, but I think that's a great case for a title shot. And if he can win it, I think he would. And look, he's a star. We all know that as well. They want draws. With Adesanya possibly gone now from the title picture for a minute, especially obviously if Chimaev gets it, he will be. That's again a massive draw. And if they can get Adesanya win, and let's say Chimaev won the title, that is a massive fight to make. For the SmackDown coming up to Costa versus Chimaev as well, probably won't be amazing, but it could be funny. But the main reason why I want to see this, and the main reason I have this in my top 5, is Chimaev is an elite fighter, a really elite fighter, and we have a good few of them in MMA, but they're not growing on trees either. And to be able to have the privilege of sitting down or seeing someone like him fighting, seeing someone like John Jones fighting, seeing someone like GSP back in the day fighting, or Volkanovski or Demetrius Mighty Mouse, the greatest of all time, fighting, it's a privilege. And I truly believe he is at that sort of level. Now, he hasn't reached that level in terms of greatness, but in terms of ability, he is right up there with some of the best we have ever seen, and I can't wait to see that. Right, the next fight I'm looking forward to is one from One Championship. October 6th, and it's Ilya Freymanov versus Thanh. And the reason I'm looking forward to this is I think it's going to be an absolute barn burner of a fight, right? For the interim title, Freymanov is just a beast. Thanh is a beast. And I was looking back at my notes for their previous fights, and I'll obviously have a preview for this and everything, but power. I have written power twice on both of their notes. That'll tell you. Freymanov, he's just lovely leg kicks in his big right hand and big power and big combos and big switch stances and front kicks. And he's a good clinch and good elbows too. And Thanh, the other side of it, the southpaw, switch stance, karateka, boxer, taekwondo, he can do it all, but power. He's good on the ground too. He's trained with Ryan Hall. I still think he's never gone to a decision. Let me just make sure that's correct. No, his last fight with Tankai was the only time he's ever gone to a decision. This is one for the ages. I really believe that. I think this could be an absolute barn burner. Thanh as well. You have to look at Thanh. He's 38 years of age, and Ilya Freymanov 27. Very much the younger guy on the way up. Even though 14 fights versus 16 fights, not too much of a difference there. But, Thanh was on a great run, beating Gary Tonin, that famous ground and pound victory, beating Martin Nguyen and many before that as well. And, going into the Tankai fight, there was, I suppose, the thought that he's going to get him out there, and it didn't happen. And Tankai showed how good he is, and to win this for the interim belt, if I'm not mistaken, to win that interim belt would be absolutely magnificent and massive for him, and the chance to get another shot. For Freymanov, look, he's just a beast. I've watched a good few of his fights, and obviously preparing for the Martin Nguyen fight and the last fight as well, against Sheehan, who is a very good fighter. And he put them both out of their handy. He really did. One with a submission, one with a submission to knees via TKO. This guy is a beast. Like, watching some of his fights in Eastern Europe, over in Russia and things, like, he's just using his length, pulling guys into fights where they don't want to get, frightening them basically, and winning fights. Yeah, but I'll tell you what, he won't frighten Thanh Le. He won't frighten Thanh Le, but maybe Thanh Le might frighten him. This is going to be a barn burner. I think if Thanh Le can get him out of there early, that's his best way to victory. I think Freymanov can get him out of there early, but if the fight goes longer, I think he'll win it. But God almighty, it's a real barn burner. I can't wait for that one. Right. Next one for me. Bellator 300 is a good card, right? It's a good card, but I don't think I think Bellator 301 is nearly better. Bellator 300 has some good fights. It has Usman Nurmagomedov versus Bryn Primus, which I was going to maybe talk about. Ryan Bader versus Vassell, which, look, Vassell deserves the respect. It is Liz Carmouche against Liam McFarlane, which I like as well. But of the 4 title fights, and the great fight between Liam McCourt and Sarah McMahon as well, I've gone for Zingano versus Chris Cyborg. And the reason I've gone for that is I feel like we've been waiting for this fight for a very, very long time. Like a very, very, very long time. And not just like since Zingano signed for Bellator, when back in, what was it, 2019, 2020, she made her debut in 2020. It feels like even for years, you know, Zingano, when she beat Amanda Nunes, beat Miesha Tate, went on to fight Ronda Rousey, like, it could have been a possibility. You know, it could have been a possibility all the way back then. And then obviously she went on that bit of a losing streak. She had injuries and all that. And now she's won 4 in a row. Obviously, a very close decision over Liam McCourt last time out. And, you know, a fight between 2 of the biggest names in that division down for the last, Jesus, how many years? 10 years now nearly, are fighting each other. So that's very good. And plus, it's been like, will they, won't they, for the last couple of years. So that's great that it's happening. But what I think is very interesting too is, I was looking at this and I was kind of thinking, right, so what's the angle here? Why am I mostly looking forward to this? I think I'm mostly looking forward to this, right? And I'll defy this point I'm about to make in a second, but because I'm interested to see where Chris Cyborg at 38 years of age is in her career. She hasn't fought since April 2022 when she beat Arlene Blincoe. No, I think she had a boxing match, I think, didn't she, or something other than that? You know, before that, it was 3 or 4 months earlier against Sinead Kavanagh. You know, she was fairly active, 2 fights 2021, 2 fights 2020, and all that, right? But she's a little bit older now. She went to the decision against Blincoe. She won the decision. She won pretty well, and she didn't look bad, but it wasn't the Cyborg of old, you know? And the fight before that, the Sinead Kavanagh, Sinead went out and she put it all on the line. Look, she got knocked out early. We didn't see too much of her. You know, and then we're talking about 2.5 years before that. So I'm very interested to see how Cyborg looks. Like, it's very easy to say, sometimes all people are past their prime, they're not there anymore. Like, Cyborg has had 28 fights and she's 38 years of age. That's a long career, you know, and she's had some longer fights as well recently. She's gone to a 5th round, a 5th round, a 4th round, a 3rd round, a 5th round, a 3rd round in the last few years. So she's had, you know, a bit of wear and tear. And it's not as if she's taken big knockouts or anything like that. Okay, sans the Amanda Nunes one, but, you know, the preparation, the weight cutting she had to do for a while and things as well is obviously a massive issue, right? But then I looked at Zingano and she's 41. She's older, you know, and the knee injuries and everything like that. I think she looked good against Liam McCourt, but the read I had before that was maybe that she was fighting a little bit differently because of the part of her career which she now finds herself in. And maybe striking a little bit more, even though, you know, we know how good she is in the ground and all of that. And we saw some of that against Liam McCourt, but we saw more of her on the ground, I suppose, against Leah as well. I wonder how this fight's going to play out. And I suppose, again, I'm doing what I'm doing here for the first fight again for this one, right? everyone will take for granted that Cyborg is going to win. Cyborg is going to go run through her, use her striking. Her power is going to be too much and it's going to be an issue, right? But what if Cyborg doesn't look necessarily the same? And I'm not saying she's going to. I'm like, Cyborg might come out and what I just said there might happen. And look, it probably will. Let's be honest. My pick will be probably Cyborg. It will definitely be Cyborg for this fight. But what if she's a little bit off? What if Zingano takes her down? What if she gets on top? What if Cyborg gives up the back? You know, what if those sort of things happen in a fight like this? And like, it's not massively beyond the realms of possibility. Like, Zingano is good on the ground. She has a takedown in her. She can wrestle. You know, Cyborg is 38 years of age. Okay, Zingano's 41, but, you know, sometimes Zingano being out of the cage for so long, you're not taking 3 years of damage in there. You're kind of, you're taking a bit of time off. Now, that's not always the case, but I feel a little bit like this one isn't as predictable as it may seem on paper. And that's why it's one of the fights I'm most looking forward to this month in October. Right, let's move to the last one. Here's the one I'm cheating on. I'll never do it again. I promise. I'll never do it again. October 28th. Tyson Fury against Francis Ngannou in a boxing match. Okay, it's not MMA, but I'm throwing it in there anyway. Now, and when I say my top 5 fights I'm looking forward to this as a fight, and I'm going to talk about that mostly, but also this event and everything around it, like this, even like this whole, the uncomfortable Saudi Arabia, everyone tweeting like Riyadh season and everything that's happened in Saudi Arabia over the last few years with the sports washing and all of that. There is a massive feeling for me anyway, and I don't know if people agree, of like, this is a bit icky. Like, and as someone who's following the Premier League and a big soccer fan over the last few years, I've got the same feeling with Man City. I've got the same feeling with Newcastle United. I'm sure golf fans have got the same feeling. Even soccer at the moment, Saudis have started their own league, and it's just like, what's the reason for this? Are these people being used? Or, but now Francis is getting that bag, but like, is it worth it? For someone, who's talked, and I think for Francis, someone who has talked so much about caring and wanting to be different, and at the end of the day, he takes the money like everyone else without really looking too far into it. I think that's all fair to say. I think that's all fair. And like, I think because Francis is like the darling of MMA media, a lot of times it doesn't get said about him. And I think I'm happy enough to say that if it's something that needs to be said, and I think I have there, but there is that background. So this is not one of these fights you can just like enjoy for the sake of enjoying it. Now, we will talk about enjoying it for the sake of enjoying it in a second, but I think it's fair to mention that as well. When you're talking about this big, massive event, what's the background of it? Like Tyson Fury, I was watching the press conference the other day. Tyson Fury stand up and literally within 2 sentences, he thanks MBS and he says, "Whoa, Francis, you're getting that bag." Like, if you watch that and you like, there's a bit of cognitive dissonance there, fine, but like, that doesn't mean everyone has to have that, and that doesn't mean we have to like feel a bit weird about all of that. And I think that's absolutely fair. So I wanted to mention that, but also the bout itself, right? I'm just looking forward to sitting back and having a bit of fun and watching it, right? Because I don't really have to cover it. I'm not going to have to break it down. I'm not going to have to be sitting there scoring it. If I want to have a little, can of harp or something during that, I can. It's not like normal fights. So I don't really get to sit back and watch MMA fights and enjoy them as much. Now I do, but I'm covering them. It's my job. It's part of work. But this won't be. And that's, kind of fun. But the nature of it is one fight that and this is maybe the the theme of this show, but we know what's going to happen, and we feel like we know what's going to happen, right? And I'm not going to go full Robin Black here and go, but what if? What if? Can we dream? Like, no, it's not going to happen. But what I'm looking forward to is, right, seeing the madness of it all. Because do you know what I do believe, right? I don't believe Francis can knock him out. What I do believe is, I believe Francis will go for it. And I believe he will throw those wild hands, and Tyson will see different angles. He'll see the MMA angles. Francis' angles are not even MMA angles. I don't know what type of angles they are, but Tyson Fury will see him, and he'll see something he's never seen before, and he'll see an absolute beast of a man throwing kettles at him. And I'm interested to see how that works out. Like, what's Tyson going to do? Is he just kind of going to jab him? Is he going to move around? Or is he going to like go at him and go, geez, I can't let this guy push me forward. I'm going to have to push him back and maybe knock him out. I'm interested in seeing how that plays out. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be funny and all of that. Like, I think for Francis as well, right? And to get this back to MMA, he hasn't fought since January 2022. There's a lot of long layoffs in today's show. And if this helps him get back to MMA, I think me and all MMA fans will be delighted. We want to see him fight in MMA. Can't wait to see him fight in PFL. You know, we have obviously the championship fights coming up here in PFL in a few weeks, and maybe the winner of that versus Francis Ngannou at the end of the year, and then the start of maybe next year, will be absolutely massive. So if this gets him back there, I'm all for it. And you know what? I'm all for a bit of fun as well. So that's it. Those are my 5 fights for the month. Makhachev versus Oliviera, and Costa versus Chimaev at UFC 294 at 112, 1 and prime 12. Freymanov versus Lee. Cyborg versus Zingano at Bellator 300, and Tyson Fury in his bout with Francis Ngannou, October 28. Those are the 5 I'm looking forward to in the month of October. All right, everyone, I will leave it there. Thank you very much for tuning in. Let me know in the comment section below which fight are you most looking forward to in October, and we'll have a little bit of a chat about it. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.